This is Dave Roberts, the Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong podcast. The show you're about to listen to was recorded before we got the news of Ruth Bader Ginsburg passing. We certainly send our thoughts and prayers to her family and friends. Please enjoy the show.
You're listening to Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong, all on Georgia Radio Network.
Welcome to episode 135 of the Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong podcast. I'm Dave Roberts. With me is writer, journalist, TV personality, Jessica Szilagyi.
I think you're getting, I don't know how long you've been on the show, and hello, by the way, but I don't know how long you've been on the show, but you're really getting good at enunciating the title of the show.
Sober. I'm sober.
It's the tea.
It's the tea. Yes. I'm drinking a lot of herbal tea because there's nothing else I can drink. How was your week?
It was good. It got the best of me with content and local articles and local government stuff, but it was good. How about you?
It wasn't too bad other than Sally was a real
Yeah, we got pummeled with rain.
Well, my parents live in Lower Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
They also have a beach place in Lower Alabama and near Gulf Shores, in an area called Fort Morgan. They have a condo down there, and as of what we're recording now, there's been pretty spotty information as far as Fort Morgan goes with where their condo is. From what I saw, their condo, the building is still standing. Obviously, it takes a lot to knock down a multifamily building, but the facades are still up. Building 1, which is older than they're in phase 2, lost a good portion of roof. My boat is in Gulf Shores, which took the eye, and I haven't been able to get in touch with anybody at the marina down there because I'm sure on top of everything else, no power. They're all taking care of family. So I'm, not trying to be the guy like, well, is your wife and kids okay? Did your house survive? By the way, how's my boat?
Right. Have you heard anything about the percentage of people without power?
A percentage? No, but it's a lot. They're talking a week or two before total power is restored. But I truly believe a lot of that is under promise, over deliver.
Yeah.
My parents are down there, no power. They're in Fairhope, which is on the eastern shore of Mobile Bay, which is about, as the crow flies, it's not that far from the coast. But with traffic and everything, they're about 30 minutes from Gulf Shores. They're without power. They lost trees. A good portion of the fence was down, which with 2 dogs, they had to get out there with the truck and push the fence up. And the pool, obviously, I know this is so privileged. The pool's got a bunch of crap in it.
There's leaves in
from
the
the
pool.
storm. Well, branches.
I'm just kidding you. You're so serious.
Yeah, I know.
In the pool, but
I know. But yeah, and of course, they don't have the common sense that God gave a mule. Because I was going to grab a generator and take it down to them because their generator's not working. But Connie kind of made the observation that if you can make it south, why can't they make it north? We have plenty of electricity up here. They have 2 sons left up here that both have houses, both have electricity. And my father works virtually for the FAA most times. He works from home, but obviously he can't work when there's no electricity because there's no computer, no internet. And he could obviously work up here. And I was talking to my mom today, and I was like, Mom, why don't you go? Well, we got a lot of stuff we got to get done around here. Like, all you're doing is soaking up resources that could be going to people that have to be there for the recovery effort.
Oh, you're one of those, huh?
No, but they're not feeble, nor are they feeble-minded. They're in their 70s. But just get out of the way.
So I'm
just come up here.
I'm going to offer just a slightly different perspective on that for two reasons. Because we in Southeast Georgia have been, I think last year was the first year that we didn't have a direct hit since I've moved down here. And I left one time and went to Atlanta, and the other two times I stayed. And the first time that I stayed, I was without power for, I think, 8 days. And it was a long time, I'm not going to lie. And it was a little bit difficult, but it was worse not being having left. First of all, I left. My house never lost power, and I went to see my mom, and she lost power in Atlanta. But on top of that, I couldn't get back. And I couldn't check on my stuff. I couldn't check on my house. You know, there are looters. People are terrible during things like that. I don't like leaving my house when that happens.
They live in a neighborhood that folks look out for each other. You know, you're kind of on property by yourself. Even if I got a generator running for them, is how long is the generator going to have gas? There's no gas available down there. I just wouldn't want to sit in a house, even though it's cooler right now, which cooler for them is in the mid 80s. But the air after hurricane, especially ground zero, after the hurricane leaves, it's stagnant. Mm-hmm. It's not windy. It's if you weren't surrounded by destruction, you wouldn't know anything ever happened. The skies don't have a cloud in them. Beautiful, beautiful sunshine. It's just no wind. And if you don't have air conditioning, it kind of sucks. And of course, my mom's worried about all the food. She's got, 2 refrigerators full of food because, 2 people need 2 refrigerators full of food in order to live.
You're awful.
Well, mom's like, we have 2 Boston Butts in the freezer. And just throw that stuff away. Select whichever vehicle has the most fuel in it and head north. Try to get as far as you can, get out of the hurricane zone so you can get some fuel and head north. But they're going to stay down there and they're going to literally sweat it out. And I know it's sometimes tough to get back in, but with Alabama, if you can prove that's where you live, they're not going to stop anybody with Alabama plates. But interestingly enough, for anybody who had plans to go to Gulf Shores for fall break, Gulf Shores will be closed to tourism at least through Sunday. So a week from yesterday, they're saying at least, and they may extend that. The bridge is going onto the island for Orange Beach. They are not letting anybody in who can't prove that they're either a resident or there to work. I don't know about the constitutionality of it. I have huge issues with closing down, public roads and saying you can't go down there. But anybody who had an idea of renting, that they had a deposit down in a house down there for fall break. Yeah, this week as this is dropping, Paulding County's out for fall break, and next week is Cobb County. So a lot of people go to that area for fall break, and yeah, you better call an audible real fast. So anyway, enough of my Sally diatribe. We do want to mention Big Daddy Unlimited. They are a direct source club for everything that goes bang and everything that makes going bang quieter. Ammo, firearms, silencers, short barrel rifles, short barrel shotguns, all sorts of accessories, outdoor accessories. They are a direct membership club that you can try out starting at $1. Now, if you do decide to try out Big Daddy, please go on to our page, use our link. It's the only way that this show advertising gets credit for it. And being our first major sponsor, we do want to get credit for people listening to the show and giving business to Big Daddy. As more ammo becomes available, they will be a direct source to have it shipped directly to your house. And it's sort of like the Amazon for guns. So big thanks to them. Getting to the show, we have a story about Andrew Gillium, who was the mayor of Tallahassee, is where that big girls' school is right there, Florida State. And he ran for governor. Hey, Florida State was a girls' school. And the University of Florida's never let them forget that. He was a Democrat running for governor against Ron DeSantis. And he had a little incident getting caught in a Miami hotel room, high in a pile of his own vomit, with a male escort. And if you don't want to take my word for it, his quote, "I was literally lying in my own vomit." So the 40-year-old who narrowly lost the 2018 Florida governor's race was found inebriated inside a Miami Beach hotel with another man who allegedly overdosed on crystal meth. And Jessica, he somehow paints himself as the victim.
Yes, he appeared in that interview with his wife, who was bafflingly supportive.
I don't know if it's bafflingly supportive or not.
Really?
That's kind of what you do. I'm fairly certain she knew the score.
I hope.
If she, and I know this is a much smaller example than Hillary and Bill, but you kind of know what you've got. If you're getting married for political expedience, and if your goal is if he's the horse you're riding to get you the political power that you want, you kind of you get out in public and you stand next to him. But there's no way this was his proclivity that this is the first time she's heard of it. I mean, you kind of got to know if you're with a dude that likes a lot of crystal meth and dudes. And there had to be some signs along the way.
One would hope.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume so. Having never been married to somebody who's on crystal meth, I would think there's
I've heard
there got to be some. Yeah, I mean, like where were you for 4 days, and why the hell is the toaster taken apart? He was on Good Morning America. His quote is, "When that photo came out, I didn't recognize the person on the floor. That was not anything more than a person being at their most vulnerable state, unconscious, having given no consent, and so on to use the moment where I was literally lying in my own vomit." So here we go. I'm the victim here. And there's another quote where he said, "I cry literally every day." Like, I would too if I were living a lie. And Drew, buddy, are you crying because you got caught? Or are you crying? I mean, why are you crying? Are you crying because this was the first time you've ever tried meth and dudes?
And it just happened to be documented.
Yeah, I mean, he just one time up to bat and he hit a home run. I mean, I have a hard time wrapping my head around the "I cry every day." Well, okay.
About this,
I mean, yeah, and you know what, I'm kind of harping on on getting caught with a male hooker. It really doesn't matter if a politician was caught in any hotel room with any hooker with a big pile of meth, and the hooker's near death and overdosed, and you're on a mattress on the floor in a hotel room surrounded by your own vomit. And then you're going to cry and say somehow I was vulnerable and someone took advantage of me in that state. No, dude. No, you gave up that right to privacy when you decided that you were going to run for governor. Like, this isn't like somebody digging up something that happened when you were 19 years old. This is somebody digging up something that happened on Thursday.
But boy, does it make for good
the
TV.
It's great content. Here's the last quote that I'll throw out there for you. "I'm still here by the grace of God." Move one in the political playbook. Moved, go ahead and move God into that's the queen on the political chessboard. You want to go ahead and move that into position. So much of my recovery has been about trying to get over shame. Again, I'm the victim here, and anybody who continues to shame me is interfering with my recovery, and you are interfering with the work of God.
Yet he chose to go on and do this interview. I mean, nobody's making him, you know?
Right. And the only reason you would do that interview is you think that there's an outside chance you can get back to that level of politics. He was almost the governor of a very large state. A state that wields a lot of political power, especially in national politics. And he was very close to that. And he ruined it. There's the only reason you go on GMA with this stuff is either you want to write a book or you think you're going to head back into politics.
I think the book's a better option, but he didn't ask me, so.
That's true. I'm not sure what you would call it. My Life on the Rock. Crystals from Heaven. I don't know. So we have an incident in the city of Claxton down your way from last week that's drawn the ire from some Evans County citizens.
Yeah, so this, I know we've talked about Claxton a number of times on the show, but it's one of the main places that I cover. And I've written a lot about their police department, mostly because they have a very vocal, for a small town, they have a very vocal community when it comes to law enforcement, like on the positive side and on the negative side. And there was an incident, I guess now 2 Fridays ago, where police were dispatched based on a 911 call. When they got there, it was for a domestic dispute. When they got there, the situation escalated and someone ended up being arrested. And they were charged with felony obstruction of a law enforcement officer and taken to jail after fighting with the police officer. And the accounts that were put on Facebook were extremely disturbing. If you read any of the posts, you would have thought that, or you would have been told that basically more than one officer stormed into this person's home, pulled him off of his couch, and basically beat him before they decided to charge him with felony obstruction when he was trying to defend himself. So, of course, you know, as the resident problem child of Southeast Georgia, people reached out to me, and one of them was one of the witnesses. I don't mind saying this because it's in the story, but one of the statements that was put on social media that was referenced by the people that contacted me was one of the people, a neighbor, who said he saw the whole thing. People started raising money for this guy who was arrested, saying that he was a victim of police brutality and that the county wasn't going to let him out of jail because he actually had an outstanding warrant and he needed to take care of that warrant before he could bond out on the new charge. Just a whole bunch of stuff. And people were calling for a full investigation into the officer. And so I, of course, none of these people contacted the police department or filed a complaint or inquired at all. So I filed an open records request, got the videos, the body cam videos, dash cam videos, incident reports, all that jazz. And it is, I mean, I've had things where people contact me about something that's going on in local government, and it's not what they said it was. And I would say that 9 times out of 10, it is truly like a misunderstanding, or they heard a little bit of it and it sounded bad, but there was a little more to the story and whatnot. This was like totally not it at all. What happened was a single officer arrived on the scene of a duplex. The door was already open. He could hear people screaming inside. He walks up to the door, says, "Hey, what's going on? What's your problem? What's the problem here, guys?" A man is screaming at a woman who has a shiner on her cheek that you can see in his body cam footage. The officer says, "Sir, can you sit down over here?" He says no, and the officer like reaches for his arm to kind of move him away from the woman, because that's what they do. They separate the parties upon arrival. But he reached for his arm. Guy pushed back. The officer reached with his other arm and kind of went for like his throat, neck area where it meets the collarbone. And then a fight ensued. Pushed the officer back on a glass table, glass everywhere. They ended up finding a gun like right where they were scuffling, cocaine, some sort of metal smoking device for illegal drugs. They took him to the hospital. The guy admitted that he used alcohol and marijuana occasionally and that he'd been drinking. Just totally not at all the story that was put on social media. And I think what really irked me the most about it was, of course, you're frustrated that this happened. And even though, I mean, if you see the video, it's hard to watch, because I think it's hard to watch people fight in general, and you don't want to see people hurt or have, pressure points. I mean, you just don't want to see that. It's not pleasant to see. But when the guy was at the hospital, there were some times when he was agitated, but there were some times otherwise when he was cutting up with the cop and another cop that came and a nurse and things like that. So, because they were treating him with respect, and he wasn't the one, in his defense, he wasn't the one that got on social media and blew it out of proportion and then it just spiraled out of control. But, I'm sure he's bothered that he got arrested, but I don't know that he considers it police brutality and rooted in race and all these things that the community kind of latched onto.
That is exactly what we want police officers doing. And that is a horrible situation for an officer to walk into. We want them protecting those who can't protect themselves. And you show up and a woman's got a shiner. I think also in your story, she's got a cut. Is get between the two parties that are fighting. And this is an extremely dangerous situation for a police officer.
The most dangerous. They are the most likely to escalate into, a stabbing of the other person or a shooting of the... They are, a lot of the things we see on the news start because of a domestic dispute.
Well, and a lot of times an officer steps between them, and now he has two people coming at him. Right. You're not taking my man to jail. So now he's now on the defense. And it looks like every step during this, he's trying to de-escalate. Hey, man, go take a seat. I'm not sitting down. Yes, you are. In the body cam footage, we see the ceiling, which means he's on his back. And at this point, the guy is fighting with somebody who's already been violent, presumably. Not that he knows this, but presumably high on coke and been drinking. I think he's told the hospital he had a couple shots of something, which even an ER doctor will tell you. Plus any police officer, deputy on the road will tell you 2 is never 2. That is the go-to when anybody wants to. If you're going in and you've got cirrhosis, and the doctor asks you, "Well, do you drink?" "Oh, I have a couple drinks now and then." In other words, I have 10 a night. So the 2 drinks I take with huge grain of salt. So you got somebody who's already intoxicated on multiple substances. You have somebody who's already been violent, and now you're on your back. And the fact is, he got control of the situation exactly. And I were talking before the show about some of the police tactics with being able to lay hands on somebody and have things. And I've got a friend of mine who's a firearms trainer, was a federal police officer, was a Cobb County police officer, and does trainings now. Super good guy. But he even put out, not every fight is a gunfight. He didn't go to deadly force. He didn't use excessive force. He used the exact amount of force necessary to subdue the person, get handcuffs on him, and get control of the situation. And I guess would he knee the dude in the ribs a couple times to get his hands behind him?
Yeah, so he actually, so of course, a body cam with only one officer being there and a body cam being at his chest, there's a couple seconds where you can't see anything because there's hands and rolling around and, the body cam's right up against the guy. And so this is the first time I've ever done this, and I don't know why I never thought of this before, but I guess it's the first time that I've actually had to stop my video and then go frame by frame, because when you first watch the video, I think that the entire scuffle is like 40 seconds, but the critical points are about 14 or 15 seconds. And so I was going frame by frame, trying to see what happened, because, when you're watching it the first time, it's like, it kind of catches you off guard because you do see the officer reach for the guy's neck. And when it's happening so quickly, it looks like the first move was for the officer to grab the man's neck. But if you pause it and you go frame by frame by frame and you slow it down and you're looking at each movement like as it's kind of like a cartoon, you can see that he reaches for his arm to kind of just gently, you can see where he like tries to guide him away from the woman. And you can see the guy push off of them, and then it just goes to hell from there. But you can't tell from the video, but he put all of his uses of force in his incident report. He said that he hip tossed him, when he was on his back, because he said that he realized he was in a position of a disadvantage. And so he hip tossed him to get him off of him, which allowed him to jump up. He took control, and then the guy still wouldn't comply and relax and stop resisting. So twice he kneed him, but he documented all of it. It wasn't like it was some sort of secret. And the agency has a rule where they automatically review any use of force. And they found no policy violations. So.
And what do we want them to do? Do we want them to not use a knee on the neck? So, a knee in the ribs is painful enough to get you to comply, but generally not dangerous enough that it's going to kill you. And if this is a problem, I don't know. And of course, he was asked when, I guess, going into booking, do you want medical attention? I need to go to the hospital for my ribs. My ribs hurt. Well, do you need medical attention now? Well, I do if I'm going to jail. Well, you're going to jail either way. Well, yes, I want to go to the hospital.
Right. And I don't, they didn't hesitate to take him, and the officer sat there, and then they brought another officer so he could relieve him and he could go do his report and all that. And there was no issue taking him. Because again, if there is a use of force, they want to make sure the guy is okay. He also had some cuts because the table was broken. The officer fell on the glass too. There was a lot. I don't think you asked a good question, which is what do we want them to do? And a lot of people were, one of the things that came out later after the arrest was made was the neighbor said, well, I saw the whole thing initially and she attacked him unprovoked and he was just trying to hold her back and this, that, and the other. Well, that all may be true. And it may be true that she was the primary aggressor, but somebody called the police and said that a man was assaulting a woman, and it was neither of the two parties, but somebody called and said that. And so that's the information the officer showed up on the scene with. And then the officer arrived to a man yelling in the face of a woman who has a shiner on her face. Of course he doesn't have all the information, and that doesn't make the man guilty, but you can understand why he would want to diffuse and separate as much as possible and have complete control, because it doesn't look good. It doesn't sound good. It's just not good.
And that is step one in a domestic dispute is let's go ahead. Let's everybody go back to their corners. Okay, let's assess what's going on. Let me get individual stories. I need you to go over here, ma'am. I need you to go over there. Let's get some separation between each other and stop the shouting match, because we can't figure out anything when everybody's shouting at each other. and let's diffuse and let's find out what's going on. This guy sounds like, and look, when officers screw up, we're the first to say, no, this wasn't right. No, you shouldn't kneel on somebody's neck for 9 minutes. We're the first ones to jump up and say that was not the right thing to do. This officer needs to face disciplinary action, or in some cases face criminal charges. This guy really, he did everything that we asked, even when we were talking about other cases. We said, once the fighting is over, it's like the bell rung. It's over. The fight's over. Mm-hmm. You put the point out that even after tussling, after getting in a fight, after having a struggle, it's all done. The officer puts his hands over the guy's head and says, "Hey, watch your head getting in the car. All right, sir, we're gonna go to the jail now." And at that point, he's treated with respect. It's over. You had your chance. Yeah, we tussled. It's over. All right, we're going to go ahead and book you. And everything is handled professionally from that point. And it sounds like he did that. He responded to violence in kind with an appropriate level of force that did not endanger the subject's life. Got control. And once he had control, it was over. He didn't take any cheap shots.
Right.
He didn't handcuff the guy and then sit on his neck. He didn't punch the guy in the ribs a third time just for good measure. This is for making me sweat. None of that happened. We had the proper steps and levels of force. His first instinct was diffuse the situation, separate the two subjects, get them away from each other, get him sitting down, so that he's no longer a threat to anybody, because he's got to make additional movements to get up before they're going after this woman or going after him, is diffuse it. And this guy refused to do that. It's almost like alcohol and cocaine aren't conducive to level-headed logical thinking.
Well, and somebody made a comment on social media somewhere, I can't recall where, but about, Someone responded that these situations are dangerous, which they are, and there's 2 points I want to make. The first is, the officer was on the scene for less than a minute when this transpired. We're 3 minutes into the video. He's been there for 1 minute, and they're fighting. So I think it's a testament to how quickly any type of interaction can really go south. The second thing I want to say is somebody criticized the fact that he went alone, and that he could have waited for the other officers, because when he called for backup, like towards the end of the scuffle, he said, "Please send me some help." 2 deputies who are with the county agency were there fairly quickly. But I don't want to get in the habit of, when we think a woman is in danger with a partner or a roommate or whoever, that we tell the police to wait until you can have 2 or 3 or 4, because the situation could have been much worse. And to have him waiting around the corner just to have another patrol car pull up, that's not the answer either. So, it's super easy for us to say, well, it'd be best if he could do this, or it'd be best if they could say that. And I really wish he wouldn't have said that, that probably really scared the guy. We can't say those types of things. We have to just demand that they do the best that they can in this, with the information that they had and the circumstances as they presented themselves. And this is one of those times where I think that did happen, which is why I put the article out, because the people needed to see that the video did not match the claims.
And I'll put it far less eloquently than you did. How long should you wait for a woman to get her ass handed to her by someone who is larger and stronger than she is before going in? Is 5 minutes waiting for another officer acceptable for having her being beaten? Is that okay? Is it 10 minutes? Is it 3 minutes? No. Anybody's initial response, if you see particularly a woman being slapped around by a guy, especially when you've got the call, that the information going in that a man is beating up a woman, that you go ahead, step in and stop. I don't care if it's an officer or if it's me walking through a parking lot, I see that happening. I'm going to step in, because that's just, we as a society don't let that happen. So how long should he have to wait for another officer to show up before it's okay for him to go in and try to keep this woman, one, alive? Because these domestic violence turns deadly too often. And, one of the charities I give to, and I wholeheartedly support here in Paulding County, is Shepherd's Rest, who is a battered women's shelter. And these stories that the survivors tell, and the women who work there, they will show you pictures of what these women look like when they get to the ER. And how long are you supposed to stand outside and listen to that happen, or know that's what could be happening before you go in and intervene because you're waiting for a second officer to be on the scene? That is an absurd Monday morning quarterback that is insulting to anybody with any sort of intelligence to say, well, he should have waited, or he shouldn't have said that. You're in your situation, or he shouldn't have needed him. He's in a fight for his life. And he restrained himself, in my opinion, to not taking the guy and taking an elbow to the back of his head and knocking him out, or to grab his asp, or to grab a chemical agent and spray it in his eyes, or to go ahead and draw a weapon, or to tase him. He used the appropriate amount of force necessary to subdue someone using the like level of force.
Well, and let's not forget that all of those moves are moves that are taught. The hip toss is a move. The knee to the ribs is, I forget there's an actual name for it, but these are, this isn't just flailing about, right?
I believe that's called a leg torso ouchie.
Yes, that sounds right. I think that's what I read.
Yeah. As somebody who's had broken ribs, yeah, it hurts.
Yeah.
It'll certainly get your attention. But he showed an enormous amount of restraint. Something I wouldn't have if I showed up and I thought somebody was beating a woman. He showed an amazing amount of professionalism that we honestly ask of these officers. So once again, social media shows that it is nothing but a cesspool of poorly educated people giving opinions in anonymity. So follow me on Facebook for my poorly educated opinions.
And if he's wrong, I'll let him know. And if I don't, Connie will.
That brings us to our next Georgia-based story, the City of Oliver. Jessica, what in the hell's going on there?
That was a great pitch. Thank you.
You like that pitch? Yeah.
Yeah, it was really good. It almost sounded like we know what we're doing. So the City of Oliver is in Screven County, population 226. I don't have a lot of ties to this county, but one was presented to me earlier this year, and unfortunately I have this big story that we almost never hear happening with the local police departments or even the cities that I work with, which was a punishment. And Brian Kemp totally rained on my parade, right? So I got this letter from somebody who complained to the state Department of Public Safety about a traffic citation they received on a road that they had filed an open records request on, and found that was the road was not approved for use of a radar by a municipal police department, because under Georgia law, municipalities are required to have a radar permit for the city. The police officer who's running the radar has to have a permit or a certification, and then there has to be a permit for each individual road that you're running radar on. So there's 3. But this road, it's called Kildare Road, it was not on the list. So this person filed a complaint with the state. They kind of had some clout, so the state sent some troopers down to the City of Oliver in Screven County and said, we want to see all your paperwork. We want to see all the citations. We don't, we're here to investigate. They conducted their investigation and ultimately found that 132 speeding citations on that road alone between January 2018 and November 2019 were unlawfully issued by the police department, which, by the way, has a total of 1 police officer. He's the chief, and he's the brother of the sheriff in the county. And it was $41,000 in traffic citations. So the state said you have to figure out a way to remedy this. We're going to leave it up to you and your municipal court. So go forth and fix this. You're on probation for a year because they'd already suspended their radar. They weren't allowed to use their radar for the term of the investigation, which I think was like 4 or 5 months. And they're on probation subject to random checks. If they do anything like this again, they'll lose it for good. And I put out this article with the letter and the sanction. I was so excited that this state was for once holding a city accountable for breaking laws that are meant to hold government accountable, even as tiny as it was. And freaking came out that afternoon and put out some shelter-in-place BS. And so my article got squashed by masks and crap. Anyway, nobody really heard about it. But of course I followed.
That's gonna be the name of your next article. Masks and crap.
Yeah. That'll be my book about my autobiography about this time period in our lives where nobody gets dressed or wears shoes, but we all have lots of opinions about stuff that doesn't matter.
That would be the worst autobiography I've ever. So on Monday, I went from the bedroom to the living room. I made myself a cup of coffee, went back to the living room. I turned on the TV and immediately turned it off. I played with the dogs. Day 273. Stanley shows up.
Exactly. So true.
So the chick that wrote this article says that we have 226 unlawfully issued, almost 41,000 in traffic citations.
You're reading it wrong. The population is 226.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Issued almost $41,000 in traffic citations. Again, this is a one-man police operation.
Yeah, and not to mention, on top of that, $41,000 in traffic citations that they possibly would have to refund would have a considerable impact on their budget because they don't really have a massive budget. And it wasn't just speeding tickets. Like, there were a handful of cases where someone was pulled over for speeding and then there was a drug investigation that's followed, or a DUI, or, suspended license or whatever that really added up, and all of that would have to be tossed as well.
Yeah, and this is obviously the city using this stuff to pay their way. But what you're talking about is fruit of a tainted tree. So if he was using radar that he wasn't allowed to use on a road that's not authorized to use radar, and then he finds anything, if that's his reason for talking to that driver, doesn't matter what he finds, DUI, drugs, it doesn't matter if he finds a murder weapon, he had no reason. And the fact is, he endangers, by operating improperly, he endangers any investigation. It could have been a serious crime. He could have stopped a serial killer. But any evidence that collected that fruit from the tainted tree is now going to be thrown out. So this is not just, and trust me, we do get a little bit of joy out of sticking it to the local government who violate state laws. And it is sad that it takes somebody a little bit of clout to get that investigation going. As it's certainly good that he didn't just call Chris Carr and file a report, because Chris Carr represents the state and he can't investigate local governments because that's not his role, apparently.
Yeah, he's not here for us. He's here for them. And you're
right. We elect him.
Yeah. No, I didn't. And he's not elected either. He was appointed. He was given the job, and then stupid voters let him keep it. That's it.
That anyway. I and the R are very powerful. But anyway, let's not get caught on Christopher.
Yeah, we'll talk about him another time because he'll keep coming up. But people are probably like, why are you guys talking about this now if it happened in April? Well, funny, you should ask. First of all, I do want to say that I read about this, and then another news entity, I'm not going to name names, but they have a TV station, hijacked my story and said that they did this investigation and found all of these things. And I was like, really? The girl, this name was Jessica too, and she does their investigations unit, and a bunch of people, I found out because a bunch of people were tagging me and sharing my article, and I was like, yeah, these are my peeps. But anyway, she did this, and so it reminded me that I didn't follow up. So I followed up on the story in July to get to see what they had done to remedy. I wanted to know if they had refunded everything, if they were working with insurance companies, all of that, expunging records. And, of course, they weren't all too pleased that I was calling, and the clerk hung up on me 3 times. So, of course, I called Chris Carr's office, and they were ever so helpful. I actually got more out of posting the audio of them hanging up on me and having Matt Lowe call and get the city attorney's name for me than I did from Chris Carr's office, but that's besides the point. So 2 weeks ago, I went and got the records, and they haven't done anything. They actually are appealing to the state in this most glorious rebuttal I've ever heard. They said that they have a document that has the road on the list, and so it's not really their fault that the state doesn't have that on record. And so they were just operating off the document, even though they're supposed to sign and notarize the document and send it to the state, and the state approves it and sends it back. None of that happened. And the kicker is that the form is dated November 2019, I believe November 1st, but the 19 is handwritten because it's crossed out of another date. And the notary who signed it had a stamp that expired 4.5 years before the date of the document was signed. So my supposition is that they used an old form and just updated the date of submission. And the notary was actually correct a couple years ago. I don't know that for certain. That is only my speculation, and these are our opinions and not those of anyone not on the show and all that crap that we always tell you. But that's what I believe. But anyway, they have not refunded any money. People are calling. They're telling them, just please hold on. We're trying to get the state to reconsider, and we'll let you know. But
we can't afford it is not a reason not to pay your fine. I mean, if I get a fine, if I just tell the county I get stopped for speeding, I can't afford this ticket. So you know what? If you could just make it go away, that'd be fantastic. That's not. You know what? It should hurt. Stupid should hurt. And you know the people of that city should be upset. They should be upset with the police chief. They should be upset with the city council. They should be stark raving mad that this is going to cost them money. They should be stark raving mad. And I say this on all levels of government. You know what? In all levels of life, the cover up is worse than the crime. That's the same way in Watergate. It's the same way every time. Had they just said, you know what, you're right. We thought it was right. We were wrong. Here's the 41,000. Instead, they tried to cover it up.
Well, they did try to. It does look like they tried to cover it up, and they said that they've been fully compliant with the state because they gave the state the paperwork when the state asked for it, and they didn't use the radar when the state said you can't use the radar. But here's the thing: there are other roads in the city. There are other roads on the list, and there are other roads that are in the city and not on the list. And the investigation was limited to a basically 23-month period. For one road. We don't know if other citations on other roads were issued and weren't approved for radar, and that there are other, that we don't know. And to say, well, the Screven County is super rural, and it's the epitome of what I do and what I deal with on a daily basis. I already explained the chief being related to the brother. Well, or the sheriff, who's his brother. The city court judge is also the state court judge, and he is married to the Superior Court clerk. And so you have two constitutional officers that are tied to this. You have an elected person, a person who has a lucrative private practice in the community. It's so incestuous. And so the state is really the only option of holding them accountable. And I'm really hopeful that they don't just chalk this up to a paperwork error. I really hope that the colonel of DPS, and he seems like the kind of person that will, this is the first time, like I said, that I've ever heard of a sanction happening. And so that wasn't under the old leadership. So if there's a chance that he'll stick to his guns, it's this guy. But they need to send a message too, because also you'll be super surprised to know this, but the police chief in this town is police chief in another town in the county, and he and his family members actually were previously the part-time, well, they were full-time police chiefs and officers in like 4 cities at the same time. It was amazing. They worked like 45 hours a day. But anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent. So.
Well, and that's exactly why we love you. Is you bring out the local corruption that gets glazed over when people sit around and they spend time watching CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, and they know more about what the president had for breakfast than what's going on right down the street. There are news outlets like All in Georgia that are out there putting these stories and bringing them to the forefront to let people know what is going on in these communities, the corruption that's going on in these communities. And, I don't even think this started off as corruption. I really think it was an honest thing. I believe the police chief when he says that the enforcement on that road was from citizen complaints because there's a school bus stop on that road and people are speeding. I believe him. Mm-hmm. And had they just taken their medicine, apologized, had they just done what they're going to do, instead, they want to cover it up. And that's where the corruption comes in. Because I can handle incompetence. You did it. You didn't mean to. This is what you need to do to get it right. And okay, well, now let's move forward. What's our plan to move forward and correct everything from there? Because like I said, he could have stumbled across a serious crime that would get dismissed based on improper handling of evidence, based on the idea of fruit from the tainted tree. And somebody very serious could have walked. He could have found a dead hooker in the trunk. And that evidence could have been thrown out because there would have been no legitimate reason to stop him because you weren't allowed to use radar on that road.
Well, that's a little depressing. Who's standing up for the hookers? I guess I am.
Go ahead and mark Jessica down for pro hooker.
Well, I mean, I've got pro stripper and pro porn. It's just added to the list. That's great. That's just great.
It's funny what happens when you're pro freedom, isn't it?
Sucks sometimes. Your Google search is really a
blonde loudmouth from South Georgia supports porn and hookers. Which is why I take every opportunity anytime you do call a police officer out on something they did wrong. It's like, why do you hate cops? I know. Like now that's out on Google forever. Jessica Szilagyi hates cops. It's a good thing no one can spell your name.
That's right.
They have to copy and paste.
Yeah.
And as you said, these are our opinions and not necessarily those of All on Georgia. Certainly not those of any All on Georgia reporter. Not offering commentary on the show. Does not represent the opinions of any sponsor. So feel free to sponsor our show. You don't have to agree with everything. And if you pay us enough, you can come on and tell us why we're wrong. Jessica, do you have any closing thoughts?
I don't really know if it's a thought. I just wanted to share something that's going on in Switzerland because I feel like Switzerland gets a lot of positive press and they don't deserve it right now. They're going to they have a referendum on the ballot coming up to give monkeys fundamental rights. They want to amend the region's constitution to include fundamental rights for non-human primates. They were given the go-ahead by the Supreme Court. They had to gather 100,000 signatures, and they got it. And part of that makes me super happy because I go to government meetings where I can't even get 2 people to show up when they're about to raise taxes or limit freedoms, and these people got 100,000 signatures for monkeys, but I'm afraid that these monkeys in Switzerland are going to have more rights than some of us Americans do because people are asleep at the wheel. And that's my positive thought for the week.
I thought about introducing your final thought as monkeying around, but I figured that was beneath the both of us. No, interesting. Yet here we are. Just leave it to me. We'll take any intelligent discourse and lower that down to a kindergarten level. That's what I'm here to do. It is an interesting read. The animal rights. I obviously don't want any animal abused. Even when I'm obviously an a meat eater. I have hunted in the past. I fish, but there's me being ineloquent just cracks you up.
Well, eat meter is something that I'm gonna bring up again because. Go ahead.
But I obviously don't want animals tortured. I don't have a problem with dispatching an animal. I don't have a problem with hunting. Obviously nature is not kind, and animals that live in the wild don't go to retirement homes. Their death often is not the most pleasant thing in the world. But I certainly don't want them tortured. But giving essentially human rights to primates is a bridge too far. But I will say the Swiss make a hell of a watch. But their watches often have to be, well, I say often, every 5 years or so have to be sent back to Switzerland to be maintenance so that they don't lose time. I don't have much of a closing thought other than be sure to like and follow us on whatever platform you enjoy news. Facebook is our major platform. Go ahead and share our podcast. Go out and write a review if you like it. If you don't, please just skip the review. But give us some feedback on the show, what you like, you don't like. Please keep any criticism down to 1 per week per Jessica, because she's in charge of this. So she can only handle so much criticism at one time. So for Jessica Szilagyi, for Eric
Dave.
Exactly. And I'm already handicapped enough. For Jessica Szilagyi, for Eric Cumby, our editor, for Big Daddy Unlimited, our sponsor, I'm Dave Roberts. Have a great week.